Over the centuries, the British monarchy has survived conspiracies, revolutions, and even attempts at usurpation. Each crisis seemed only to reinforce the power of the crown, keeping intact the legacy of a lineage that spans generations. However, obscure records suggest that the royal family's fate may have been sealed long before modern controversies, through a forgotten prophecy. One warning that the monarchy would fall not by wars or political disputes, but by something few dare to mention. Ancient documents, fragments of letters, and persistent rumors indicate that a frightening prediction circulated in the corridors of royalty for centuries. Among the details that have reached the present day is the belief that the collapse of the monarchy would pave the way for something dark and invisible, which would rule unseen. But to what extent does this prophecy connect with recent events? Welcome to another night, where mysteries never sleep. I'm Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for your help. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just a click, but it makes a huge difference in getting YouTube to share these videos with more people, and it helps me keep bringing you this content. I'm counting on you. Let's go to the video. In 1842, the British historian William Marsh claimed to have found an unusual document in the archives of a private library linked to the English aristocracy. The scroll showed signs of aging and had inscriptions in archaic Latin, interspersed with passages encoded in a system previously unknown. The most intriguing aspect, however, was its translated content, a prophecy attributed to an anonymous seer from the 16th century. The text mentioned the final night of royalty and the rise of a crowned shadow, expressions that sparked speculation about their meaning. A British historian finding a lost document? Sounds like the beginning of a conspiracy movie, right? But wait, this story gets even stranger. Marsh's attempt to publish his finding was met with skepticism by the academic community, which questioned the lack of concrete evidence regarding the scroll's authenticity. Shortly afterward, the document disappeared without a trace from official records. The historian himself died in circumstances that were never clarified, and his library was dismantled. The scroll's disappearance and the subsequent events raised doubts about a possible intentional cover-up. Unofficial accounts indicate that fragments of the document may have been copied by anonymous collectors before it vanished. According to these copies, the prophecy did not merely predict the decline of the British monarchy, but also the exact moment when it would occur. Unlike revolts or invasions, the text suggested that the corrosion of the crown would happen from within, pointing to the presence of an invisible power behind the scenes of royalty. Some interpretations of the document mention heirs fallen before their time, leading scholars to speculate about possible connections to historical events involving members of the royal family. However, the passage remains ambiguous and may be subject to varied readings. The absence of the original scroll makes direct verification of the authenticity of these translations impossible. Another excerpt mentions a last king who will not reign, prompting questions about its possible relationship to the line of succession. Some analyses suggest it could refer to a monarch whose reign would be abruptly interrupted, or an heir who would never reach the throne. The validity of these interpretations remains uncertain, but the theory gained attention amid debates about the monarchy's future. Last king who will not reign. Sounds like some ancient curse, right? Could we be talking about a puppet king, or someone who never actually takes the throne? The possibility that the prophecy's author had access to privileged information in the 16th century raises hypotheses about its original context. The existence of discrete societies around the British monarchy is documented, and some researchers suggest that certain groups might have anticipated structural changes in the long term. However, there is no direct proof that the scroll was connected to such organizations. Another frequently analyzed aspect is the reference to a crowned shadow, which may not symbolize an individual but rather a system. This interpretation suggests that monarchical power could be replaced by another form of government without the population immediately noticing. In a globalized and increasingly digital world, some scholars wonder if this transition might already be underway. The absence of the scroll in historical records and the lack of verifiable sources raise doubts about its authenticity. Over the centuries, the British monarchy has kept tight control over its official narrative, preserving strategic documents and restricting access to sensitive information. If the prophecy truly existed, it remains uncertain whether its disappearance was a deliberate decision or the result of being forgotten over time. The lack of concrete evidence prevents any categorical statements about the scroll or its content. Some interpretations consider it a historical hoax, while others argue that its description could have been based on real documents that were later destroyed or hidden. The difficulty in separating fact from speculation keeps the story shrouded in mystery. Despite uncertainty about its veracity, the idea that a prophecy might have foreseen changes in the monarchical structure continues to be a topic of interest. As long as the original document remains missing, its existence will stay in the realm of theories and suppositions, without official confirmation. Throughout the centuries, the British monarchy faced significant challenges, yet maintained its continuity. Wars, political crises, and scandals shook its foundations without leading to its dissolution. Some historical theorists suggest that certain modern events may align with the prophecy from the missing scroll, especially the idea of a gradual, internal transition in the monarchical structure. One of the earliest events often cited in this context is the abdication of King Edward VIII in 1936. For the first time in modern British history, a monarch voluntarily relinquished the throne, altering the line of succession and setting an unusual precedent. Some analysts interpreted the episode as a possible reflection of what the prophecy described as the king who will abandon his glory. And here the prophecy starts matching reality. A king who just leaves the throne for love. Romantic, but strange. Could he have known something we don't? The premature death of Princess Diana in 1997 was another event that raised questions about its connection to the prophecy. Although investigations concluded that it was a car accident, speculation about the circumstances persists. Excerpts of the document mention a star fallen under false light, leading some to suggest a symbolic link to public figures whose impact altered how the public views the monarchy. In 2020, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's decision to step away from their royal duties reignited discussions about internal changes in the monarchy. The departure of a member in the line of succession and their later revelations of institutional weaknesses could be associated with the prophecy's description of blood ties that break. However, this interpretation remains open, as similar events have occurred throughout British history. Beyond individual events, broader shifts in the relationship between the monarchy and society are frequently analyzed through this lens. Republican movements in Commonwealth countries like Australia and Canada have gained strength in recent decades, questioning the continuation of the British monarchy as head of state. The passage in the scroll referring to the crown that will lose its kingdom without battle could, according to some scholars, relate to this gradual loss of monarchical influence in territories once under its control. Succession to the throne has also been a target of speculation. King Charles III assumed the throne during a period of significant social and political upheaval, and discussions continue about how long his reign might last. The prophecy speaks of a king who will reign without power, which some interpret as a reference to the increasingly symbolic role of the monarchy. However, this reading is subjective, given that the monarchy's shift to a representative function has been taking place for centuries. The progressive loss of political influence by the monarchy is well documented. Over the years, its functions have been limited, while Parliament and the Prime Minister hold effective power in state decisions. The concept of internal corrosion, cited in the prophecy, can be seen in this context, suggesting a structural shift not happening abruptly, but through institutional changes over time. The recurrence of tragedies and scandals involving members of the royal family can be viewed as part of the natural evolution of a historical institution. Yet some researchers argue that the sequence of these events indicates a pattern fitting the known fragments of the prophecy. Analyzing these facts through that lens, however, depends on each scholar's interpretation. The dissolution of European monarchies in the last century shows that no power structure is permanent. Several countries abolished their royal families through revolutions or political decisions, raising the possibility that the British monarchy could eventually follow the same path. Should that happen, it would be a political and social process with no confirmed link to ancient predictions. Interpretation of the prophecy remains an open topic. Though certain events might align with its known passages, there is no concrete evidence they were foreseen by a 16th century document. History follows a dynamic course, subject to various changes and influences, and any attempt to connect it with ancient texts requires careful analysis. The stability of a monarchy relies directly on clarity in its line of succession. Historically, the absence of legitimate heirs has led to conflicts and political crises, weakening governments and, in some cases, bringing about the collapse of entire dynasties. The prophecy recorded in the Vanished Scroll mentioned a throne without a sovereign and heirs who will not reach their destiny, passages which, according to some scholars, may relate to recent developments within the British monarchy. In the 20th century, the death of Prince John, the youngest son of King George V, is one case often analyzed with this perspective. Diagnosed with epilepsy, he was kept away from public life and died at age 13, largely omitted from official records for decades. Although his story did not directly impact the line of succession, his exclusion is viewed by some as a reflection of the forgotten heirs idea described in the document. The death of Lord Mountbatten, mentor to then Prince Charles, is also mentioned in discussions of the prophecy's possible meaning. Assassinated in an IRA bombing in 1979, his loss was significant for the royal family. Though not a direct heir, his role in shaping the future monarch raises questions about his relevance to the prediction. Prince Harry's choice to step away from his royal duties is another event linked to the concept of a throne without a sovereign. While he remains in the line of succession, his distancing reduced the monarchy's continuity options. The full impact of his decision cannot yet be measured, but it sets an unusual precedent in the modern history of the British royal family. Succession has always been a central element for the monarchy's continuity. Past kings and queens often had long reigns, providing periods of stability. However, recent patterns show changes to this scenario. King George VI died at 56, leaving the throne to his daughter, Elizabeth II, whose reign was one of the longest in history. With Charles III ascending at an advanced age, speculation arises about another transition in the near future. Prince William's future, next in line to the throne, is also debated. His role in the monarchy's continuity is crucial, but increasing pressure on his family creates uncertainties about his path. The prophecies mention that those chosen for the throne will walk on unstable ground has been interpreted by some as referencing potential future challenges that could affect his ascension. And what if he decides he doesn't want that crown? If the prophecy is right, the answer may have been written centuries ago. The dissolution of the British monarchy is a recurring topic in political and academic discussions. Although the institution has endured for centuries, societal changes could lead to its transformation or extinction. Many European countries abolished their royal families in the 20th century, either through revolutions or political restructuring. Should the United Kingdom follow a similar path, it could be viewed as confirmation of the prophecy or simply part of the natural cycle of nations. Another interpretation suggests that the throne without a sovereign should not be taken literally. Instead of the physical absence of a monarch, the phrase may mean a king without real power, performing only a symbolic function. In recent years, the monarchy has faced growing challenges, including questions about its relevance in the 21st century and its position in the British political system. If the prophecy did indeed foresee an empty throne, questions remain about what would take its place. Throughout history, the transfer of power has not always been evident at the moment it occurred. Empires fell without wars, and governments changed without fanfare. The possibility that the monarchy could be gradually hollowed out without the public noticing raises new questions about the role of royal dynasties in today's world. Succession need not be interrupted for power to dissipate. The real disappearance can occur through structural changes, shifting authority elsewhere. If the public ceases to associate the crown with real power, the monarchy can cease to exist as anything more than a symbol. The prophecy in the missing scroll did not merely mention the monarchy's decline, it also indicated the rise of a new power structure. The document referred to a crowned shadow and a faceless power that would take control. These expressions have been interpreted in different ways, fueling debates about their possible meaning. Some scholars suggest the prophecy did not foretell a sudden event, but rather a gradual transition that may already be underway. Wait a minute, the monarchy disappears, but the power remains? That doesn't mean it's over, just that it's changed hands. So who's really in control now? One of the most common interpretations suggests that the monarchy would not cease to exist, but would transform into something else. The loss of political influence by monarchs over the centuries is a documented fact. In the past, kings and queens held absolute authority, making decisions about wars and national policies. Today, the British monarchy plays a ceremonial role, while Parliament and the Prime Minister make governmental decisions. This shift in power could align with the idea of the crowned shadow mentioned in the prophecy. Another hypothesis indicates the replacement of monarchical influence with less visible structures. Financial organizations, media conglomerates, and global power networks have taken on the dominance once concentrated in royal hands. This shift could be represented in the prophecy as a hidden government, operating behind the scenes without needing a single head of state figure. Now here's the unsettling question. Could the royal family have just been a distraction all along? Technology and the digitization of society are also frequently associated with this interpretation. In the 21st century, information and data are more strategically valuable than territories or armies. Control over that information enables silent and effective influence over governments and populations. Some researchers argue that this new power model has already replaced old monarchies, without most people noticing. Similar cases can be observed throughout history. The French monarchy, for example, was abolished during the French Revolution, yet the elites who held influence at the time continued functioning within the new republican system. The same occurred in Russia after the Tsars fell, where power remained centralized but under a new governmental structure. The theory suggests that the United Kingdom may be going through a similar process, where the monarchy continues to exist formally, but without any real influence. The symbolism involved in the prophecy has also been studied. The British crown has always represented stability and tradition, but if it serves only a ceremonial role, its meaning may have eroded over time. Some scholars believe the monarchy may remain simply as a historical symbol, while true power has already migrated to other realms. Today's global political context reinforces this idea. The growth of supranational institutions, the rise of corporations with resources surpassing those of some countries, and the centralization of data in major digital networks are signs that political power may be shifting to a new configuration. The prophecy's mention of a faceless power could be interpreted as a decentralized system of influence, no longer needing a monarch or single ruler. Whether this transition has already taken place or is still in progress, there is no definitive answer. However, structural changes in British politics and the global order point to the monarchy's increasingly symbolic role. What was once an institution with authority over nations may be becoming merely a historical vestige, preserved by tradition but with no real impact on government decisions. The prophecy does not specify how this transition would happen, only that the British monarchy would lose its position without requiring a revolution. This aligns with how other dynasties have vanished over time, gradually replaced by new power models without major direct conflicts. If this prediction is correct, the monarchy's fall may not be dramatic, but rather a silent process already underway. The remaining question is, if the crown no longer wields influence, who is truly in command? Throughout history, architecture has been used to preserve symbols of power and influence. Palaces, abbeys, and monuments built by the British monarchy carry records of its past and reflect the importance of royalty in shaping national identity. Some scholars suggest that certain structures may contain hidden references to the prophecy from the missing scroll, whether by coincidence or deliberate intention. Westminster Abbey, the site of royal coronations and burials, features symbolic elements that spark interest. Its walls hold detailed sculptures, including gargoyles in unusual positions. Some appear to depict hooded figures holding broken crowns, which has led to speculation about a potential allusion to the monarchy's downfall. However, there is no official confirmation of this reading, and it remains within the realm of theories. If there's one place where history likes to hide secrets, it's in old stones. Have you ever noticed the details in some of these buildings? At Windsor Castle, St. George's Chapel houses the coats of arms of members of the Order of the Garter, one of the monarchy's oldest and most exclusive honors. In the chapel's ceiling, there is an empty space where a coat of arms should be, but it was never filled. Some historians suggest this gap was reserved for a monarch who never existed, while prophecy theorists see this detail as a possible sign of the absent king mentioned in the missing document. Buckingham Palace, the seat of the monarchy, also has lesser-known features. Historical accounts mention a restricted room called the Privy Council Chamber, where important decisions are made. Some older documents refer to Latin inscriptions on its doors, including the phrase Principium et Finus in Tenebris Est, which can be translated as the beginning and the end lie in darkness. The origin and purpose of this phrase are unknown, adding fuel to speculation about its possible meaning. Another point of interest is the monument to the Great Fire of London, designed by Christopher Wren in the 17th century. The structure originally included an inscription referring to the king's judgment and the rebirth of power over the flames. During a 19th century restoration, that inscription was removed, prompting questions about whether its removal served a specific purpose or was simply a conservation decision. Beyond physical monuments, written historical records also reference potential changes in monarchical power. In a 1603 letter, a counselor to King James I used the phrase, "The empire's bones will scatter through time." This seemingly cryptic statement has been interpreted by some as a prediction of the monarchy's gradual decline. The presence of themes of transition and transformation in structures associated with royalty could be an architectural coincidence or a reflection of historical perceptions of power's instability. Over the centuries, the British monarchy underwent numerous reforms and adaptations to stay relevant, which might have influenced the symbolic elements added to its buildings. The hypothesis that the monarchs or their advisors were aware of the prophecy and tried to leave clues about it throughout history is unproven, but it's a recurring topic in analyses of hidden messages in royal monuments. Interpreting these symbols depends on context and the researcher's bias, making it impossible to definitively affirm any link to the missing scroll. Many of the architectural elements considered mysterious have alternative explanations tied to the culture and art of the period when they were built. Nevertheless, the recurring themes of broken crowns, absent kings, and references to the passage of time raise questions about whether these details are purely coincidental or hold deeper meaning. If the prophecy truly existed and circulated among influential circles of the monarchy, the possibility that it left marks on royal monuments cannot be dismissed. However, without concrete evidence, any relationship between these symbols and the British monarchy's decline remains speculative. Among the rumors about the missing prophecy, one of the most discussed involves an alleged account by a royal family member who supposedly mentioned its contents before his death. The event has no official records but circulates in academic circles and among scholars of the subject. According to this story, a high-ranking member of the monarchy confided to an aide that the cycle was coming to an end and that the crown no longer belonged to those who wore it. Yet the authenticity of this account has never been confirmed. Imagine someone from the royal family themselves saying, "The cycle is coming to an end." Was it a warning or just another backstage story lost to time? The idea that the monarchy may be undergoing an irreversible process of transformation is reinforced by historical patterns. Empires and dynasties over the centuries have not fallen solely by wars or revolutions. They have also fallen due to internal changes and gradual erosion. The missing prophecy stated that the British monarchy would not be destroyed by external forces, but rather through a silent process whereby the power would no longer reside with the royal family before the public even realized it. Among the symbolic elements often analyzed is the coronation ritual. The ceremony involves a series of historical artifacts, such as the St. Edward's crown, the sovereign's scepter, and the golden ampulla. Some researchers propose that the prophecy might relate to a rupture in this ritual, indicating that when a monarch could no longer bear these items, the monarchy would have lost its original significance. However, this interpretation remains without concrete support. Recent changes to the monarchy's role bolster the theory that it may be becoming increasingly symbolic. In the last few decades, there has been a rise in questioning the institution's necessity and its impact on British society. Some analysts suggest that the monarchy could continue to exist but without any real influence, remaining only as a symbol upheld by tradition, fitting the prophecy's description of the throne that remains but without a king. The replacement of monarchical power by other control structures is a frequent topic in political and academic debates. Supranational institutions, global corporations, and digital surveillance systems have gained significant sway over governments and societies. If the prophecy predicted the transition of royal power to a more invisible realm, it might already be taking place gradually, without most of the population noticing these structural shifts. The dissolution of the British monarchy is not confirmed, but it is discussed in various political contexts. Some countries abolished their royal families in the past, whether through government decisions or shifting public perception. Should the British monarchy follow a similar trajectory, it could be seen as fulfillment of the prophecy or simply the natural outcome of evolving political institutions. The missing prophecy does not specify what would replace the monarchy if it ceased to exist. The question of what follows remains open. Some interpretations suggest that the vacuum left by royalty could be filled by new governance forms, while others claim the transition has already occurred and that real power has been transferred elsewhere. Examining historical events through the prophecy's lens continues to spark debate. Many incidents commonly connected to the document can be explained by political and social factors without requiring an ancient forecast to justify them. The absence of the original scroll prevents confirmation of its authenticity, making it impossible to determine whether its descriptions were founded on genuine information or merely period conjecture. The British monarchy still stands, but it faces challenges that could redefine its future role. If the prophecy genuinely foresaw its transformation, that process may be quietly unfolding without public fanfare. History shows that structural changes are not always noticeable when they happen, and the shift from one power form to another can occur without most people being aware. Whether the prophecy was a warning or simply a mistaken view of the future remains an open question. The monarchy may adapt to new realities or eventually lose its political relevance. If that happens, the prophecy will have been fulfilled not as a sudden event, but as an inevitable process recorded over time. In the end, what we know is that empires fall, monarchies change, and power never truly disappears. It only changes hands. After all, it could be just historical coincidence or a true royal warning hidden in the shadows of power. But the prophecy that foretold the end of the British monarchy continues to intrigue those who study its fragments. Over the centuries, the signs of its fulfillment seem to have emerged gradually. Unexpected tragedies, scandals that shook public confidence, discrete changes to the power structure. All of this raises a troubling question. What if the crown's downfall has been underway for far longer than we think? History proves that no empire lasts forever, and perhaps the British monarchy is merely another cycle about to close. But the greatest uncertainty isn't its possible end, it's what comes after. If the throne is emptied, if power passes into invisible hands, and if shadows replace kings, who will really rule? This story is just one piece, and one day, maybe you'll see the entire puzzle. If this made you think, subscribe, like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share. After all, more voices mean more discoveries.